For all of us, we're kind of getting ready for our kids to go back to school. Some of our kids are in school. Some of us are homeschooling. We're preparing or engaging right now our kids and teaching them about the world. But at some point in this journey, we're going to look to our kids and have them be mentored to walk through a season of life with someone else giving them instruction and guidance. For some of us, that can be a really dark place because we don't know if we can trust other people. And sometimes we don't know if the other people have the same perspective or maybe even view the world the same way that we do. It can be a really dark place. But today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in our daily segment, Facing the Dark, we're going to talk about a topic that's maybe a little bit underspoken. And that's the topic of how important it is for our kids to have people who have almost a similar experience in the world that they do, helping mentor them in different situations in their lives. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, a literacy program in Ohio is encouraging Black men to become teachers, and it's doing this by providing paid training while they serve as preschool literacy tutors. The Literacy Lab's Leading Men Fellowship is what it's called. It's expanded from its origins in Washington, D.C., and has recently now announced partnerships in the Cincinnati State Technical and Community College, as well as Mount St. Joseph University, which is a private Catholic university in Ohio. Dr. Kathy, I'm going to take a pause here and kind of step back because I think that sometimes for many of us, we've heard about kind of these, I would call this maybe kind of an affirmative action decision, right? Like we're trying to put people who might not normally have these opportunities in these places. And sometimes we can kind of have a negative kind of feeling about that. It might kind of feel like we're not putting the best person in the best situation or the best person in the best training. We're doing it a little bit more based on their race or their gender or other kind of factors in there. But I think this is kind of interesting and unique, where you have young men or young women whose race is different from their teachers. And I want to know a little bit, does it matter having someone who looks like you teaching you? What are your thoughts here on this?
Really interesting. And I appreciate everything you've already said. If these young Black men, or it doesn't say age, if these Black men are being trained to be teachers and earn jobs in preschools and daycare centers and even our schools in the preschool section in the inner city or where many Black children may attend, it's going to be fabulous times two. Like, I'm really excited about this because when young Black boys and girls see Black men reading, it could change them. Because the dropout rate from our schools is terrible straight across the board, but it's terrible, terrible, terrible for the African-American community. I grieve for them, the loss of life because of abortion and of course, hate crimes and murder. It's not good for anybody. And yet I especially grieve the dysfunction that I think a lot of us are aware of in that community. And of course, even to give Black men a vision for something they can do that'll contribute to their culture, I'm all in for that. I think it's fabulous. And you know what? Every one of these men who gets a little kid to learn how to read or how to, stop dirtying his diaper or the, 1, 2, 3s, that is going to be so good for the heart and soul of that Black man. I think it's exciting.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I think this kind of goes to that idea of like modeling and mentoring, right? Like what you kind of described there, I think has a lot to say to that. And I'm really encouraged kind of when my kids find mentors. And one of the things that I've kind of talked to them about when they're looking for mentors is that they kind of find people who they want to be like later on in life, right? And so I kind of encourage them, like, if you want to be like a financial, guru, go and spend time with a financial guru. Spend time with somebody who does that, who looks that part, right? And this leads me to kind of the idea of the smarts, right? You've written a book on the different smarts. We tend to think of kind of people that have different smarts. And I want to ask you kind of something with this. Is it helpful to connect our kids with people who see the world the same way that they do, with the same smarts? What does that do for kind of their idea of self-confidence? And maybe even I would like to have you kind of explain their relationship, even with their parents, like who don't see the world the same way that they do. I've got a kid who's really like number smart, math smart, loves all of that. I am not that person, right? And so I kind of want to help him connect with other people who are that way. But I also wonder a little bit, does that diminish some of my influence? What are your thoughts here on this? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's great. No, I think, so he's logic smart. He's good with numbers and thinking and cause effect and comparison contrast. And you're already seeing it as a strength. So that might have something to do with the call upon his life, a way that he would serve and or find career and or relate to people. So it is your ministry to him to connect him with others who can help him see the benefit of being that way. And you can't show him the benefit of being that way because you're not that way. So he discovers through somebody who works in a museum or somebody who's a tremendous teacher or a social worker or, fill in the blank, a great truck driver who can, problem solve his way out of any mess. And I think that's totally cool because you're not abandoning your kid. You're still engaged and involved with him in so many other ways. And I think ultimately he can respect the fact that you were not intimidated by allowing another man to speak life into your kid. That you were able to say to your son, it could be a daughter, hey, this isn't my gifting, but boy, your mom and I are seeing you thrive here. Have you noticed that, Mr. Jones over at the church has a lot of the same kind of attributes? Would you enjoy getting to know him? And maybe you invite him over to your house and so you all get to know him. Or maybe you ask your son if he would like you to invite him to have, a Coke with your son, or does your son want to make the invitation happen himself? I think it's fabulous. The smarts, if kids don't have the same ones that we have, and we have all 8, but if we have different strengths, they might really question whether or not they should have it if you don't have it. If they love you, they love your wife, they admire you guys, they want to become like you, and they see that they have a smart that you don't have, they might diminish it. But in reality, it might have been the greatest one that God gave them. And maybe it's even going to come back and serve you someday because you don't have much of it and you want him to develop it for so many reasons.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I think it's really encouraging and helpful. I think that sometimes I kind of look around my family and think, okay, so which one's going to, provide for me when I'm old and decrepit, right? But I'd like to hear you kind of speak to this idea of identifying where our kids are and how they see the world. Because there's so many different age ranges that we kind of experience and maturity kind of patterns that kids work through. Is there kind of an age where their smarts kind of become more pronounced, or an age where we should kind of identify where they're at? And how can we do that well?
The smarts are all awakened. So all of us are created with the capacity to develop all 8, and then they have to be awakened and celebrated. And that can happen at any time. You can be 60 years old and finally understand art because one of your new best friends takes you to an art museum, goes slowly with you, and you get it, you go over to a Hobby Lobby type store and you buy some watercolor and you have a really, really good time. And all of a sudden, this part of your brain is awakened and you paint for 5 days in a row. And you don't tell anyone for fear that they'll think you're nuts. I mean, I know that these kinds of things happen. Typically, the 8 parts of the brain are awakened in our early years, birth to maybe age 8 or so. And then the older that they get, the more pronounced they become. We'll begin to see the strength in school where math is their jam or creative writing is easy or learning a foreign language was not hard for them. They begin to serve more at home with chores and responsibilities and in the community. And then we also see the smarts show up that way. So I usually say that, if you've got 8 and under, don't try to classify the smarts because they're being awakened and there's going to be a lot of peak and valley enthusiasm. And then when they become 9 and older, begin to watch for them to gravitate. I used to play school so much with children in my neighborhood that I could have earned a degree doing so. I mean, seriously, I played school with my stuffed animals and with my little dolls. And look what happened. Became a teacher of young kids, a professor, been a teacher my whole life, way before I earned a degree in it. And, fortunately, my parents paid attention and it was easy for them to help to direct me if I had any question at all that, no, teaching appears to be a gift and something you're interested in. I started teaching Sunday school when I was a junior in high school myself. I taught the 5th grade Sunday school class because I'd rather do that. I wasn't all that impressed, frankly, with the high school class at my church. So I begged out and went and served instead. And so the word and the logic and the people smart for me was very, very obvious. So you know what, my friend? It's knowing your children and it's paying attention. And when you know the smarts, you know what to look for, you know what to talk about. And it, as you know from all of your kids, can be really life-changing, very encouraging.
I really appreciate Dr. Kathy's perspective here. It's something that I was reminded about from the book of Titus. And I'm going to start reading at Titus chapter 2. And this is what's written. You, however, must teach what is appropriate to sound doctrine. Teach the older men to be temperate, worthy of respect, self-controlled, and sound in faith, in love, and in endurance. Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way that they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can urge the younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, to be kind, and to be subject to their husbands so that no one will malign the word of God. Similarly, encourage the young men to be self-controlled. In everything, set them an example by doing what is good. In your teaching, show integrity and seriousness and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about us. I like these passages that come out of Titus, partly because it's an instruction on what to instruct those we're instructing, right? It's an encouragement that we would have a goal, a perspective that we're really working to instill in our kids. And in that, really what the book is getting to is pointing out how important it is to guide those around us with sound doctrine to an understanding of the world that God has created and made. And in that, no matter what our race or our ethnic background or even the way that we see the world with smarts, we can rest in the reality that God has revealed himself in the world. He's revealed himself to us, and he's now instructing us on the way we should live. And I think taking that step forward and guiding our kids specifically to find mentors who also hold that to be true, well, that can be a bright light that cuts through some of the darkest and most insecure times that we might feel as parents and that our kids are going to experience later on in life. And I hope that that's an encouragement for you. And I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast in this daily segment, Facing the Dark. If you have any feedback or any topics you'd like us to discuss, please email us at wayne@ignitethefamily.com. Again, that's Wayne. Again, that's WAYNE at ignitethefamily.com. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, I want to say thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.